My wife cheated for months while I paid for everything. But when I recorded her accidental call and confronted her at the restaurant with her lover, justice was devastating, and they never saw coming what they lost. I'm 27 years old. I work in it for a software company downtown, and 4 months ago I discovered my wife was cheating on me in the stupidest and most unbelievable way you can imagine. I mean, it wasn't that I hired a private detective or went through her phone like a psycho. No. She literally let me listen to her entire date with the other guy because she didn't hang up the phone properly. That's how dumb she was. And what came after, honestly, I still have trouble processing it because it was like living a cheap soap opera, but in my own life, you know? I should give you some context first. Emily and I had been married for like 3 years, together maybe 5 in total. We met in college. She was studying graphic design but never really worked in the field after graduating. When we got married, we agreed that she would stay home for a while I worked, like until she found something she really wanted to do. I made enough for both of us. We weren't rich, but we lived comfortably in a 2-bedroom apartment downtown. We paid the bills without problems. We went out on weekends, normal couple life. Or so I thought. The thing is that over time I started to notice that Emily was like different. I don't know exactly when it started. Maybe about 6 months before everything exploded. She was dressing up more, wearing new clothes that I didn't remember seeing her buy. She was always on her phone, texting and smiling. When I asked her who she was talking to, she'd tell me friends, her sister, things like that. I'm not one of those jealous guys who check phones. Honestly, I never thought I had reasons to distrust. We were happy, or at least I was. I guess that was the stupidest part of it all. That I was there working my 8 or 9 hours a day thinking we had a good life while she was basically living a completely different reality. The day everything changed was a Tuesday. I remember perfectly it was Tuesday, because on Tuesdays we had a team meeting in the afternoon that I always hated. It was like 1:30. I was on my lunch break at the office, eating a sandwich at my desk while reviewing some reports. I decided to call Emily to ask her what she wanted for dinner, like one of those mundane married couple details. She answered. She sounded like rushed or surprised. I don't know. And she told me, "Wait a second, Daniel." And I heard the phone move, like she had pulled it away from her ear, then the call cut off. I thought it cut off. What happened was that she thought she had hung up but didn't do it properly. You know what I mean? The phone stayed connected. And for some reason, I don't know if it was instinct or what, I didn't hang up immediately. I stayed there with the phone to my ear, like waiting for her to come back, and then I heard her talking. But she wasn't talking to me. She was talking to someone else, with a completely different voice, like flirty and soft, nothing like the voice she used with me. She was saying things like, "Oh, sorry, that was my roommate. You know how he is." And then she laughed. Roommate? Really? We were spouses living in the same apartment, and she was calling me her roommate to someone else. I froze there at my desk with the phone glued to my ear, unable to move. I heard her say things like, "I can't wait to see you. It's been forever since Friday. I miss this so much." And a man's voice, that sounded like older than me, maybe 30s, responded with equally disgusting things. She laughed and laughed. That kind of laugh that I thought was just for me, you know? And me there sitting feeling like someone had stuck a knife in my stomach and was twisting it. I don't know why, but I pulled out my phone's voice recorder, that app I sometimes use to record work reminders, and started recording everything. Something in my head told me I was going to need proof of this. I listened to them talk for, I don't know, maybe 5 more minutes, until she said, "See you at that bistro you like, at 2:30, okay?" And the guy said, "Perfect, can't wait." After that, Emily did hang up the phone properly. I just sat there staring at my cell phone screen with the recording running. 47 minutes it said at the end. I had recorded 47 minutes of audio where my wife basically planned a date with another man at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday while I was working to maintain our lifestyle. The first thing I felt was like a kind of emptiness, you know? It wasn't even immediate anger. It was more like shock, like when you fall and it takes you a few seconds to realize you hurt yourself. I got up from my desk, went to the bathroom, splashed water on my face, looked at myself in the mirror trying to process it. How long had this been going on? Who was this guy? How many times had they gone out while I was working? All those questions were bombarding my mind, and I had no answers for any of them. I went back to my desk and told Kevin, my coworker who sits next to me, that I had a family emergency and had to leave. Kevin's a good guy. He covered for me without asking questions. I grabbed my stuff, got in the car, and drove downtown where that bistro she had mentioned was. I knew it because we had gone together a couple of times. It was a kind of fancy place for lunch, with white tablecloths and everything. I arrived at like 2:20, parked across the street, where I had a view of the entrance, but where she probably wouldn't see me if she arrived. And sure enough, at 2:30 on the dot, I saw her arrive. She was wearing that blue dress I had given her for her birthday last year, the one she always told me was too elegant to wear during the day. She looked dressed up like for a special occasion. Perfect makeup, freshly styled hair, everything. She walked into the restaurant smiling like she didn't have a care in the world. 5 minutes later he arrived, a tall guy, well-dressed, expensive suit, hair slicked back, the kind you see in perfume commercials. They greeted each other with a kiss. It wasn't a cheek kiss, it was a real kiss, and they went in together holding hands. I sat in the car for, I don't know, maybe 20 more minutes, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to burst in there immediately and make a scene, but another part, the more rational part, I guess, told me I needed to handle this with a cool head. In the end, I decided I was going to confront them, but I was going to do it in a way that she couldn't deny anything. I crossed the street, went into the bistro, and told the hostess I was looking for my wife, that I had seen her come in. She looked at me kind of confused but let me through. I found them sitting at a table in the back, like by the window, laughing and drinking white wine in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon. Emily saw me first and the face she made was like out of a movie. Literally all the blood drained from her face in a second. The guy kept smiling for a moment until he realized something was wrong, turned, and saw me standing there. I just stared at them, not saying anything yet, letting the moment stretch out and get more and more uncomfortable. Finally, Emily said, "Daniel, what are you doing here?" with that shaky voice that tried to sound casual but failed miserably. And I just said, "I came to meet your friend," while looking the guy straight in the eyes. He stood up, like confused, and said, "Look, man, I don't know what's going on here, but Emily told me you guys were separated, that you were just roommates." And that's when I took out my phone, opened the recording, and pressed play. Emily's voice came out clear, saying all those things about missing him, about last Friday, about me being just her roommate. The guy went pale too, looked at Emily like he couldn't believe it, and she started stammering excuses that made no sense. The guy, who I later found out was named Jason, looked at me and said, "I didn't know anything about this. She told me you were getting divorced, that you lived in separate rooms just until the papers were sorted out." I nodded and told him, "I don't blame you. She clearly lied to you too." Jason grabbed his jacket, said something to Emily that I couldn't hear but was obviously not pleasant, left 2 $20 bills on the table, and left. And there Emily and I were alone at that table, with half a bottle of wine and the attention of literally everyone in the restaurant. Emily changed strategies immediately, went from denying everything to crying, to telling me it was my fault for working so much, that I was never home, that she felt lonely. And I just looked at her thinking about how the hell I didn't see this before, how I married this person and thought I knew her. I told her very calmly to listen to me carefully, because I was only going to say it once, that our marriage had ended the moment she decided to sleep with another guy, that I was going to start divorce proceedings immediately, and that I was canceling all the credit cards and access to bank accounts that she was added to before the day was over. She started screaming that I couldn't do that it was her money too. But I reminded her that technically everything was in my name because I was the only one working, and that I had been stupid enough to give her full access. That would change now. I got up and left the restaurant while she was still sitting there crying, probably more from public humiliation than anything else. The first thing I did when I left was call the bank from the parking lot and cancel all the shared cards. The lady at the bank asked me a bunch of questions, but I was so on autopilot that I just answered what was necessary. Then I went straight to my apartment. I got there at like 4 in the afternoon, and Emily wasn't there yet. I started packing my things, clothes, laptop, important documents, everything I considered really mine. I was doing that when I heard her arrive. She came in furious, screaming about how I dared to humiliate her like that I was going to regret it, that she was going to tell everyone I was an abuser, that she was going to keep the apartment and everything. I kept packing without even looking at her, which I think made her more furious. Then she changed tactics again, started crying and saying we could fix this, that it had been a mistake, that she loved me. But I was already so emotionally exhausted that her words didn't even register. It was like hearing background noise. I finished packing, grabbed my 3 suitcases and 2 boxes, and left. Before leaving, I told her she could stay in the apartment for now, because technically the rental contract was in my name, but that I wasn't going to pay another month's rent here, that she had until the end of the month to find somewhere to go. She yelled something at me as I closed the door, but I wasn't listening anymore. I went to Chris's house, a friend from college who lives alone and who had always told me he had a spare room if I ever needed it. I never thought I would actually need it. That night, Emily started calling everyone we knew, friends, family, telling them her version of the story, where I was the villain who abandoned her out of nowhere. Some called me asking what had happened, and I simply sent them the recording. After that, no one else questioned my decision. My parents, who live in another state, called me worried, and I explained everything to them. My mom cried on the phone, saying she always thought Emily was weird, but never wanted to say anything. That made me feel worse somehow, like if even my mom suspected it and I didn't. The next day, I went straight to a divorce lawyer that a coworker recommended. I showed him the recording, told him everything, and he told me I had a pretty solid case. We started the papers immediately. In our state, you don't need proof of infidelity to get divorced, but it definitely helps when it comes to dividing assets and those things. I served her the divorce papers like 3 days later. A sheriff went to the apartment and delivered them to her in person. She called me hysterical, saying this wasn't real, that I couldn't do this, but I had already blocked her number at that point. I only found out because she left me like 20 voicemails that I eventually deleted without listening. What happened after was basically 2 months of legal and financial craziness. Emily hired a mediocre lawyer who told her she could take me for everything, that I owed her spousal support and I don't know what else. But it turned out that since our marriage had been relatively short, I had proof of her infidelity, and she hadn't worked by choice rather than inability. The courts weren't very much on her side. Meanwhile, I discovered that she had been spending ridiculous amounts of money on clothes, hotels, dinners, with this Jason, all with the credit cards I was paying for. Literally thousands of dollars in the last 6 months. There was a particularly ugly moment like 2 weeks after I left her. I went back to the apartment, accompanied by Chris, to pick up some more things I had left. Things like books and some furniture that were mine from before we got married. We knocked on the door and Emily didn't answer, but I still had a key, so we went in. When we opened up, we found that she had thrown all my remaining stuff off the balcony. And when I say all, I mean all. My desk, my gaming chair, my Star Wars figure collection that had taken me years to build, everything was destroyed in the parking lot below. She had also emptied the joint account we still had, took out like $3,000 that were left there. Chris helped me document everything with photos and videos. We called the police because technically that was destruction of property. The cops arrived, took the report, and when Emily started screaming that I had abused her and that she was afraid, the cops asked her to show evidence. She had nothing, obviously, because it had never happened. Luckily, the building had security cameras in the hallways, and the manager let us review the footage. You could clearly see Emily throwing my stuff off the balcony alone, without me even being near the building. The cops warned her about making false accusations, and we left. My lawyer added all that information to the divorce case. The destruction of property, the draining of accounts, the false accusations. Everything added up against her. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened. Jason, the guy from the restaurant, contacted me through LinkedIn of all places. He apologized to me again, told me he really didn't know anything, and that if I needed him to testify or give some kind of written statement about how Emily had lied to him too, he was willing. Turns out Jason is an accountant, very respected in his firm, and he was furious that Emily had gotten him into such a situation without his knowledge. I accepted his offer, and his statement also went into the file. The divorce process took like 3 months total. We finally reached an agreement. She didn't receive spousal support. She had to pay me back half of what she took from the joint account, and I kept everything I had bought during the marriage with my money, including the car that was in my name. She kept the clothes, her personal things, and some cheap furniture that frankly I didn't care about. I left the apartment and found a new one in another part of the city. I didn't want to go back to that place ever again. Now it's been 4 months since that Tuesday at the bistro. I live in a 1-bedroom apartment that's perfect for me, smaller but cheaper and without any memories of Emily. I have peace of mind again, you know? I can come home after work and not worry about who she's talking to or what she's doing. I don't have to live in that constant lie that I didn't even know I was living. My friends tell me they see me better, more relaxed, more like the Daniel from before. Emily tried to contact me like a month ago by email. She sent me a long letter telling me she was in therapy, that she had realized her mistakes, that she wanted to apologize properly. I didn't respond. Not because I'm vindictive, but because there's simply nothing she can say that changes what happened or makes me want to have her back in my life in any way. That door closed the day I saw her kissing another guy in that restaurant, and there's no way to reopen it. I've thought a lot about all this, obviously. About the signs I probably ignored, about whether I did something that contributed to her looking for someone else. And honestly, yeah, I worked a lot, but that was because I was building a future for both of us. Or so I thought. And even if I hadn't been the perfect husband, if I had worked too much or didn't pay her enough attention, that doesn't justify what she did. If she was unhappy, she could have talked to me about it. She could have suggested couples therapy. She could have gotten divorced before looking for someone else. But she chose to lie, cheat, and spend my money on her affair. And then, when I discovered her, she tried to destroy me in every way possible. The craziest thing about it all is that if that phone hadn't stayed connected that Tuesday, I'd probably still be living in that lie. Who knows for how much longer it would have continued like that. Months. Years, maybe. That's what scares me most when I think about it. Kevin, my coworker, told me recently that sometimes the worst things that happen to us are actually the best because they get us out of situations that in the long run would have been much worse. I guess he's right. Last week, I was eating a sandwich at my desk, exactly like that Tuesday, 4 months ago, and I realized I didn't feel that pressure in my chest that I felt all the time when I was with Emily. That constant anxiety that something was wrong but not knowing what. Now I know what it was. And although the process was horrible, and although part of me still feels betrayed and stupid for not seeing it coming, I'm better now. That's enough for now, I guess.